1, 2, 3, sing. Okay, so this is not going to be the regular YouTube video. I'm going to try to do something completely different this time. I'm just going to speak out my mind without editing, without anything. It's probably going to be more like a podcast video of me ranting about my thoughts about what's going on in web design as I'm recording this at the end of 2025. And for those of you who don't have context about who I am, my name is Ran Segal. I've been a designer for 20 something years, and I've been freelancing. I've been working with startups. I've then stopped freelancing and started YouTubing and then creating Flux Academy and teaching others how to be web designers. So this is kind of like the context of where I'm sharing my thoughts. Okay, so I want to start out with what I think is the difference between what's actually going on in the web design space and what's talked about in social media, because what you see on social media is not necessarily always in alignment with reality. And I'll try to explain what's the gap basically. So what's really going on is what has always been going on in web design, and I guess in all industries, which is some people are very successful. They're making a lot of money. Their business are doing great. Some people are doing badly and it's not going well for them. And social media tends to amplify things. And, being on social media, the creators are always trying to make things viral and create kind of like engagement baits. And so they make drama about a lot of things, from what's going on in the market, the tools, and they create drama almost about anything just to get people to watch them, right? And I admit, because I own a YouTube channel, so we also try to, of course, make our videos interesting for people to click. So we might resort to, clickbaiting a little bit. And so social media just tends to, be extreme and create drama, and makes you feel like it's either the end of the world and it's like, everything is bad, or everything is like everybody's making so much money and how come I'm not making so much money. So I just want you to know that there's a gap there between what you're seeing and what actually goes on. And I think that, from talking to people and from seeing what actually goes on, what's going on right now is what always goes on, right? Some people try to say, oh, it's a bad economy, but I've been hearing this for years now, right? So in 2020, there was the coronavirus, and then there were lockdowns. So the economy was bad. Everybody was canceling projects. Then afterwards, there was hype inflation and then recession. Every year there is something. And throughout all of these ups and downs of the economy and whatever, I've always seen people who blame the economy for the fact that they are not successful. And at the same time, you see other people who are very successful. They're making a lot of money. It was actually the best year in their business. So I just want you to know that, again, the state of the industry is actually what it has always been, right? And if you actually look at the statistics from whatever the statistic of labor or whatever, you will see that there is a growth in the industry. Like there's more people working, there's more money for projects being built, there are more people being hired. That being said, the drama on social media wouldn't always show this to you. So always keep in mind that what you're seeing on social media is an extreme view, and reality is a lot more complex than that. And you can usually find proof to whatever belief you have. If you believe that the economy is bad and that's why you're not successful, you will find, posts on social media to validate this belief, and the other way around, right? If you think that I can do this, I can build a great business, you will be able to find proof for that as well. So that is just to say that don't believe everything you read on social media, and don't feel discouraged if you see people who it's not working out for them. It doesn't mean that the economy sucks and it's impossible to succeed. good people who are doing the work, who are talented, who are building great businesses are always successful. There's all kinds of statistics, which I don't remember right now, about, some of the best companies in the world were started actually during recessions. So the economy is actually not an excuse for, doing bad in business. That kind of leads me into the next topic that I want to talk about, which is money and web design. And I started sharing, I don't remember if it was 2016 or something like this. So like 9 years ago, I started sharing here, doing like annual reviews and sharing how much I make as a web designer. And the reason that I did this was not to boast or brag. It was just because back at the time, nobody was talking about it, and it was actually impossible to know what was possible to expect if you're going into web design. And I remember that for me, before I actually went into web design, when I was working in a startup, so I got into startup work from an agency. An agency was low paid, and I guess startup world was high paid. But I didn't know what to expect, and I happened to, by accident, get access. They told me, hey, just go through our Dropbox drive to review all of our files. And among the files, I actually found the contract of a colleague of mine, and I found out that he was making significantly more money than me. And this just blew out my brain, because back at the time, I didn't believe that a designer can make so much money. So for me, just knowing that somebody else, that I can see him, and he is just like a regular person, so he's not like God or something, but he's making so much money, to me that was very inspiring. And also it was kind of like opened my mind for me to what was possible, and motivated me to say, okay, now that I know that it's possible, these sums are being paid for designers, how am I going to achieve that? And so when I started YouTubing, part of my reason for sharing, because I think the first time I shared how much I was making $100,000 a year, and then the next year $200,000, and then the following year $300,000. So, but even the first year, $100,000 back at the time, it was a lot of money for being paid as a designer, as a freelance designer. And so I wanted to share that with other people who didn't know what was possible, just to tell them, hey guys, this is possible. You can work, you can improve, and you can get there. But what ended up happening, and again, I'm not reducing my responsibility, because I started also sharing how much money I was making, is that throughout the time, and nowadays in 2025, almost 10 years later, it's super popular for people to boast about how much their money they're making. Now it's very popular to share kind of like MRR, like monthly recurring revenue or annual revenue. I'm making this much money per month. I'm making this much money per year. And admittedly, people today are making a lot more money than I did. People are making $500,000 a year, 1 million, 2 million even. But people have started sharing that, and it became kind of like a, I don't want to say, measuring contest, but like it's kind of like a status, who is making more money. And it kind of like, it's kind of like a game where you show how successful you are. You're better than other people because you're making more money. So that means you're probably better than them. And I think it led to the wrong thing, because previously, and it's a little bit ironic, right? Because previously, when nobody thought that you can make money as a designer, the only people who wanted to be designers are people who cared about it. It was fun to them. They wanted to be creative. They wanted to create things. And so they got into design because, again, they were passionate about it. And when it turned out that you can also make money doing this was like, at least for me, oh my God, I can't believe that I'm actually getting paid for doing what I'm excited and I love doing. But now that everybody knows that it's possible to make a lot of money with design, it actually attracted the people who cared more about making money rather than cared about design. So now a lot of people who are looking for either like a side hustle or a way to get out of their, dead-end job, or a job that they don't like consider design as an option just because they see, hey, there's a lot of money to be made there. So that, I'm not saying it brought a different kind of crowd into web design, but I feel like it kind of flipped the incentives from trying to be the best designer that you can be and hope that you can make a living, which was bad, to be honest, because a lot of designers were underpaid. They were not getting what they were worth, and it was kind of like a cliche that you're not getting paid as a designer, especially compared to developers. It now changed things around where people are trying to be good just so that they can make more money. And I think that always when you're trying to just optimize for making more money, it's difficult to care about the craft and put in the hours and efforts to actually make you very, very good. So I still think that there are a lot of people who just go into this because they care about this. And I think these are still the people who are leading the industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. But I do think that there's a lot of people who are in this industry right now just to trying to make a quick buck or and again, I don't, I think I am part of, making this happen because of course we're selling web design courses and we're basically telling people, you can be a web designer and you can work remotely and you can be a freelancer and it's a dream job, which it is, right? And so we are in a way perhaps dragging the people who have the right, maybe the wrong motivations. But at the end of the day, and we tell all of our students, and I always talk to people about this in the office hours, you have to pick something that you're very excited about. Otherwise, you're not going to have the energy to go through what it takes to build the craft and to build a business and to be successful. And so that, actually leads me into the topic of you can't really trust influencers anymore. I hate the term influencer. I never wanted to be like an influencer. I started out doing YouTube because I wanted to share, I started doing daily vlogs. For those of you who've been watching all of these years back then, I was just trying, this was kind of like a creative outlet for me to share my days and how am I working and what am I learning as I'm just like sharing my journey. And for the first maybe 3-4 years, I wasn't even selling anything. So I had no agenda. But at some point, I started selling courses and then it became my whole business. And so, of course, I try to maintain my integrity, which is honestly saying what I'm thinking. But obviously there is a bias, right? If I'm selling a Webflow course, then I want to have people buy my course. So I would recommend Webflow. Now, I am, again, as I said, trying to really look at what's best in the market right now. And for example, when we saw that Framer is actually a very interesting alternative and is good for different reasons, now we're also recommending Framer and we say, hey, if you want to go into web design, here's Webflow, it's good for this and that, or here's Framer and it's good for this and that. But my point here is that today, everybody that creates content is basically incentivized in some way or another, right? And even people who are not selling their own products or courses or something like this, I'm getting emails, for example, from Wix and other software business every other day trying to pay me to recommend their product. Now, I'm in a position to say, no, I only want to recommend the tools that I actually believe in. So I'm not going to recommend tools that I don't believe in. But if you think about the average creator that has a little bit of an audience and somebody and is not making money, and then a huge company comes with great budget and it's like, hey dude, we're going to pay you some money. Of course, I can't even blame them, right? Because maybe not everybody is privileged and have enough money where they can say, no, thank you, I'm giving up, I don't want to make money. Everybody want to make money, and it's obvious. And so they're going to take this engagement and they're going to start recommending some tools. And you never know, it's not always disclosed whether you're being paid or not. And just for the clarity, I'm not being paid by Webflow or by Framer to make these courses. By the way, Webflow were the sponsors of this channel. Back when I started, before I had a course, they did sponsor my channel for a while, but then the sponsorship stopped, and then I made the course regardless, and I'm not getting paid from Webflow to do the course. I'm just making money off my own course, so I can choose, what I recommend. But a lot of people, everybody has their own agenda, right? If you're a content creator, and again, maybe a few years ago when I started, and a lot of people, maybe when they started creating content 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, it was just like, hey, let's be creative and create content. But today, especially if they spend consistent time on this, then they have some kind of strategy behind we're creating content, whether it's to find clients or getting paid this way or another. But everybody has some kind of agenda, and it's very difficult. And I think, honestly, of course, people are not stupid. So people know this, and people become very cynical, I think, to what's called influencer marketing, basically believing what they're hearing people recommend on social media. So this, and it's going to even get worse, right? Because let's say me, okay, you've been watching my videos for years, I'm a real person, and you trust me, so you might believe me when I say, oh, I think Webflow is great. But now with AI, you're going to see a bunch of influencers who you don't even know if they're real people recommending a bunch of stuff. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about social media or soap or whatever, some hamburger place. You're very soon going to not trust anything because you don't know if it's a real person, if it's a real recommendation. So I think this is kind of like a general thing that's happening in the world, and obviously it affects web design and how people are making their choices. Now, why it matters is because, unlike a few years ago where there was basically all you had is Photoshop, now you have like so many tools, right? We talked about Webflow and Framer, there's Figma, and there's so many tools, and people are conflicted about what tool to choose, right? And that's when they look to social media to help them make an assessment, and now they're cynical if they can't even trust social media, so they're actually confused about what should you do. And the funny thing is that people become kind of religious about the tools that they're using. And, I think that is because, especially Figma and Webflow earlier on, they were very community oriented and supported their community. So people, besides just using a tool for their work, started to actually feel something. Oh, I love this tool. I love this company. And I care about this. And if somebody dares say that Framer is better than Webflow, I'm going to fight them online, and I'm going to say that they're stupid and they don't know what they're talking about. And we're going to have this tool war where we, shout at each other what is the best tool. So that is where we are today. But again, I think it's a lot of drama on social media. For the average person, I do see people confused, but I also remember myself like 7 years ago, before Webflow was a clear winner, at least for me in the web design space. There was a time like 7 years ago where there were a lot of different tools. And if you haven't been in web design for 7 years, maybe you don't remember this, but there was all kinds of, I don't even remember the name of all the tools, but there was, there was Adobe Muse, there was, of course, Dreamweaver, there was, what was the name? There was WebEdu, there was all kinds of software for web design, and Webflow was just one of them. So there was a lot of competition in that space. Eventually, Webflow became the winner, and kind of like the market, from having a lot of options, consolidated. There was a clear market winner, and now we're all again in a place where, okay, there used to be just Webflow, and now there's like, there's Framer and there's Figma sites, and then Wix are trying to come up with Wix Studio, and maybe you want to compare tools like Lovable or Cursor, and so there's a lot of options again, and maybe it's going to consolidate again with like, okay, this is the best solution for this or that. But it's not the first time, I think, in history where there's kind of like a lot of alternatives and people have to choose, have to try for themselves and figure out, okay, this is the best for what I need right now. And maybe we're going to a world where there's multiple different tools. I do think that as time goes by, it becomes clearer. The use case become clearer, right? So Webflow is going into the more, complicated enterprise websites, highly polished animation and that kind of stuff. And Framer is we want to make it easy for designers. We want to make everything seamless. We're investing in having great fonts, and you can do both design and development within Framer. So the use cases are becoming clear as time goes by. But again, I think this is just a phase, and there's, I think, a theme in my rant is that everything is, a cycle throughout history. Everything that happened is happening again. And, even with Webflow, when I got started like 7-8 years ago with Webflow, everybody was in WordPress, and it was like, no way, we're going to try something new and bet on this new tool. Who are they? They're not trustworthy, and it was very difficult to get clients to even try them. And now we're getting into the point where it becomes so popular that clients themselves demand it, and there's huge demand for it. So there's this concept in startups, crossing the chasm, I think, where there's early adopters and then early majority and then late majority. And so there's this adaptation curve of, how tools are being accepted in the market. And so different tools are in different stages of this adaptation curve. Like, luckily for me, I made the bet on Webflow, and Webflow is now, it's difficult. I would say that it's now in the early majority, right? Who knows where the top of this growth curve is going to be. It's difficult, but we have to also accept the fact that everything has this growth, and they die eventually. Google will die at the end eventually. Facebook and Meta will die eventually. So there's nothing, we know, if you look at companies, nothing lasts forever. So this is it. And honestly, in a rapidly changing industry like web design, I don't think that you're looking for the one tool that's going to last you forever. You're going to try to look for what's a good investment, what's a good tool that I can use in the next couple of years, as there's huge demand for it, I can benefit from it. And then I'll always, it's my job to always be informed about what's happening, what also is growing and trending, and hopefully catch the train. I mean, it's a debate to say whether you want to be in the early adopters, fighting against the majority. When was it the best time to join Webflow? When nobody was using it and you had to sell it really hard to client, or now when clients want it and it's a sure thing? Used to be a bigger bet, and now it's kind of like a sure thing. So it's not always clear when is the best time to kind of like join this, pick up a new tool. But I guess when you're seeing that upward trajectory. One more thing I want to kind of ponder about is, there's a lot of there's a lot of talk, especially from old grunted designers, about the fact that, there's no more creativity left in web design, and art is dead, and everybody's using templates and UI kit, and everybody's just doing the same things over and over again. And I also think that this is kind of like some of the social media noise that is not always reflected in what's actually going on. Because I think there always used to be, even 10 years ago, right? So what was everybody doing? Like, the majority always used to build like WordPress templates with theme forests or something like this. Just buy a template and use it, or build something with Wix, and like there was just a small minority of designers who were actually coding and creating cutting edge web design. And today the tools are better, so a lot more people can participate in the more custom design. But I don't think more people are using templates today and more websites are boring. No, I think there's still a lot of creativity. Some of it you see on awards websites. Some of it is just like pure creativity. But what I think is, we don't always see the best things, because the best is not necessarily the most famous one. So we tend to equate famous with good. I don't think I am the best designer just because there's a lot of subscribers on my YouTube channel or my Instagram. Definitely not. And even if you look at other, who's big on Twitter today and has a bigger voice, it doesn't mean that they're the best or most talented. It just means that they're most famous. Back in the day, I'm trying to think about when I started in design, who were the famous designers? The famous designers were the designers who were either featured in design magazines or got invited to talk at design conferences. So they became famous in a way. Were they better? Maybe, maybe because somebody picked them so they could pick the best. Or at least who they thought were the best. And now it's more like, more democratic in the sense that everybody has a voice, everybody can share their work. And sometimes the best work goes viral and garners attention. And sometimes just the loudest voice gets a lot of attention. And sometimes it's also just consistency, right? So again, I don't think I am the best, but I was just very consistent to keep sharing on YouTube year over year over year. So it, amasses kind of like a bigger audience, not because I'm the best designer, but again, because I was just consistent. So yeah, social media makes viral people famous, and viral does not always mean that these are the best people, but they get amplified because, the algorithm pushes them. So we don't always see the best people, but they are there regardless of whether they're famous or not. And I still think that eventually they lead the industry because we see their work, again, whether it's on awards websites or, their work just lives in the world and everybody is inspired and then everybody copies them. So whether they get credit or not, they made their impact and they pushed the industry forward and creativity forward. But I'll just finish out with, my conclusion, which is eventually makers are going to make, right? So regardless of who's shouting in social media and regardless of who's making money, there are still people who are in this industry because they just like to do things and they care about their craft and they want to do good things. So they'll just keep doing it. Maybe they're not going to be the most famous. Maybe they're not going to make the most money, but that's not the reason why they got in. They got in because they love creating and they loved the craft. And these people are going to keep making, and I think eventually, win or eventually be most valuable. So I don't know if there's like a bottom line to this rant. Maybe that everything is a circle, and maybe just don't take all of the hype from social media as what it is today. And I think what my goal with starting this channel, and maybe it still is today, is that to find these people who just love to create and make and let them know that, because sometimes what I've noticed, and honestly that was one of the things that frustrated me, there's the makers who are passionate and sometimes they're very talented, they're not always also business savvy and business oriented. So they will be kind of like underpaid and maybe not the most successful. So I do hope that these people, use the tools out there and the knowledge out there to kind of make themselves, just make themselves more successful so that they can keep doing and keep on creating. I still think that for those people, this is the most fun time, and because you've got endless access to AI tools and new tools to create and build and explore and be an artist. That's also kind of like my thesis for what's going on with AI. The only thing left to do is going to be an artist, because all of the implementation, all of the technical work, I think, is going to be done by AI, and the only thing left for us to do is to be artists. So those who care about the art, care about being creative, care about putting new stuff into the world, they're going to shine and they're going to have a blast with everything that's available to them right now. And super happy for them. All right. Hope this rant was valuable for someone. And I'll catch you in the next video.